Welcome to Desert Wanderers. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. Today we have a special host, Father Sintra. He will be doing his Generational Catholicism series. This plays on the third week of every month and will be a new segment for our show on Desert Wanderers. We're so excited to bring this to you. Let's jump right into it.
Hello, Jake. Hello, Lindsay.
Hello, Father.
Hello, Natalie.
Hi.
So we have a special episode today. So Natalie Lair, the hostess of the Desert Wanderer podcast, under which the Generational Catholicism is housed, is here with us. And we'll talk about some more nuts and bolts of many of the topics that we've been talking about. And I'll say a little bit more about that. But first, you guys mind if I start with a prayer?
Please.
So I'm going to pull again from this book, Forming Families, Forming Saints, which is really good. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, Saint Martin de Porres followed your Son closely in pouring himself out for his neighbors, even when he was met with rejection and humiliation. Through his intercession, may we learn to become souls capable of sacrifice for our own sanctification and for the good of others, and so become the saints that you wish us to be. Grant this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So Jake and Lindsay are getting ready to have a new child. Natalie's getting ready to have a new child. Also, the little Dodges are getting ready to have a new child. So exciting time for many of the families associated with this little project. And we'll talk about that, welcoming a new child and related dynamics. And we'll get into more, like I said, we'll focus more on practical things, but I do want to just kind of set a framework of what is happening to us, like what's happening to the parents, right? I think, and this prayer really kind of highlights this, that may we learn to become souls capable of sacrifice. This is definitely a part of fatherhood and motherhood, becoming capable of sacrifice for our own sanctification and for the good of others. Which others? Well, primarily for the good of the children. And so become the saints that you wish us to be, all parents and children, right? So I think the big questions kind of looming in the background are, what does it look like to welcome a new baby in a family that will begin to shape their little hearts to begin to make them receptive to God and to the Catholic faith? And then also similarly, and perhaps more importantly, what does it look like for parents to allow the birth of each child to shape their own hearts in a way that makes them more and more receptive to God, more and more receptive to becoming souls capable of sacrifice for our own sanctification. And so, okay, I've said a lot. Hopefully this is the most that I'll say during this call, but I really just want to, just really highlight that this is when God is wanting to sanctify us. And of course, he's going to be doing this through parenthood, through fatherhood and parenthood, and fatherhood and motherhood. Okay, with that long introduction, Natalie, take it away.
Thanks for having me on, Father. I'm really happy to be here, but I guess to start off, we'll just start going into the questions, that I have or that you might have. But I guess the first thing is how does it change when you have another child? Does it just continue to get easier? I felt from 0 to 1, my husband always says from 0 to 1 was 0 to 90, miles per hour. And then having your second baby is 90 to 100. It's faster, obviously, and there's a learning curve, but it's not as bad. But then I've heard horror stories about people say their third child is the worst. And then I've heard other people are third babies are the babies that make you have 4, 5, 6, 7, So I guess with that being said, is it as scary, practically, getting the daily stuff done or adding another child? Is it harder? And if so, in what ways?
It's funny to talk to other parents and there's certain numbers that,
you're like, oh, that number, that was really hard. And they're like, yeah, me too. And you're like, is it the number? And I always like analyze that too. Like, is it the number? Is it the life circumstances that are going on? Is it the kids' personalities? Like, really, how can you even like narrow any of that down? I agree with your husband about the 0 to 90 with the first. The first was like, yeah, like I don't even know how to.
It's like a whirlwind.
Really, yeah. Our first was she was a hard baby. She was a fussy baby, poor thing. So I feel like we got, like trial by fire. It was just like got thrown in the deep end and we were like, what is going on in our lives? And then the second was like super chill and still, I mean, their personalities, this holds true in a lot of ways. And so like number two wasn't, but yeah,
I think like the biggest life change for sure is 0 to 1. And then having our third was harder. Like there's more needs. But I think like number of young kids makes a huge difference too. Because we had 5 under what? 6?
Yeah, what would they have been? I don't know.
Under 7?
Yeah, something like that.
And that was pretty hard. That was probably the hardest time. Was like those times. But then number 6, we always kind of tell each other we never caught up after number 6. And we're still not caught up.
Like after baby, there's like survival mode. You're like, let's just like make it through, this newborn time. But yeah, it was number 6. We're like, and now 7. Okay, well, there was not the point where we're like, we got this. It's just like, and people say like once you have number 3, like, oh, what's one more? And it's like, oh, I mean, it's like a whole new set of needs. Like there's a whole extra person.
But it like changes too because after number 6,
you have to get a new car at that point,
girls.
Right?
Yeah.
We did. We got a Suburban after number 6, and we were maxed out. We were maxed out in the van at
the minivan
at 5, and then we got a Suburban. We didn't want to go super big yet, and we didn't want to spend a lot of money, so we got an older Suburban. We were actually joking about that today, because our van was newer, and the minivan, sorry. And she had a backup camera, and then we went to the Suburban, and there's like just beepers.
The backup sensor, yeah.
And then we went to the 15 passenger, and there's no camera or beepers.
Like a bus.
So we just went downhill, but with backup technology.
The thing is like the van that my husband and I got, the guy that owned it before I did was a professor at BSU. He was a computer science major or professor. And so he put in like the touch screen backup camera in this like 2002 van. Like old. And I'm like, it's the perfect van for me. It's like so luxurious because I have like enough space, but I also have the backup camera. It's a big deal, you feel special when you got that backup camera.
Wow, especially in a 2002. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, we had to get a bigger car. But the older kids also can help more, like at that stage. And so we never really caught up, but you like enter a new phase where like now you're getting help and you're teaching kids how to help, and it's not perfect, and sometimes it's harder to get help or to try to get them to help, but you do have that help. And then which this might change the subject, so maybe I'll hold on, but were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, I can see this happening with anyone having a younger sibling. So it doesn't matter how many you have. I don't think necessarily. But like, I kind of think about, I have a cousin who is like always the second mom, to everyone else. And so I'm like, I always wonder about how much responsibility is like too much, because like my almost 3-year-old can do a lot of stuff. He understands command, like what is being asked of him. And I always wonder if like I'm ever asking too much of him at any certain age. Did you guys ever feel like you struggled with that, knowing what's too much or what's not enough? Because there's obviously a point of like learning responsibility and having chores.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're still working through that. My first thought would be like remembering our roles, and then also different seasons. Like, I'm the father, she's the mother. And so we can't put those roles onto them, but there are seasons like right now, like Lindsay's not feeling great. And so the older girls are helping more than they normally would. But that will change. It's not gonna be like that forever. And we can talk to them about that too.
Mm.
They know that like right now it's a little harder for mom and she can't do it all. Um, but they're also like they have their role too as kids and like as being part of the family. They're not just um, they're like an integral part to the function of the family unit. And so they have their chores and they have their things, but they're also kids. And we lament sometimes because sometimes they'll have like a half an hour maybe of chores to do, but they waste time or don't do it or procrastinate. And then we're like, I just want them to go play. They're kids, but they've been working all day, but they actually haven't been working all day.
The problem is that they didn't work all day. I mean, as far as a 3-year-old, I don't know if you can ask them to do too much. I mean, like, there's like child labor, obviously, but like a 3-year-old, like their play is work and their work is play. And like, I think I don't know. I'm not sure that you could really have them do too much. It made me think of, like Maria Montessori and like Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. I don't know how familiar you are with that. But yeah, like everything that she called what we would maybe say play, like the work of the child. And yeah, all the things that I'm like trying to think what you could ask a 3-year-old to do, like go get me a diaper, go get me the wipes, like take the silverware out of the dishwasher, like all of those things I think are I totally get like the concern and I we're definitely trying to figure out like the right tension there. But as far as like a 3-year-old, I'm just not sure that you could have them do too much.
That's actually good to hear, because a lot of the things you are asking, they'll turn into chores that they'll do for themselves, like put your laundry in the laundry bin or set the table. Yeah. Here's your stuff to like set the table. Or yeah, it's probably more like, I guess what I worry about is like, am I being too lazy? Like I'm pregnant right now and I'm changing a diaper and I really don't want to get up because guess what? Like the wipes are across the room and you're not listening to me while I'm asking you to get the wipes. And then I'm like, am I just being lazy? Should I just like get up, or should I just have him listen to me and do it for me? I don't know. Yeah.
I have a philosophy when it comes to chores that I try to ask the youngest capable child. So then it like kind of maybe more evenly like distributes the chores. So like even a 2-year-old can like go get the wipes for you, But like our oldest is 12. Any job that I want one of the kids to do is going to be better done by her than any other kid. Like hands down, like any job I want done, like first choice would be for her to do it. But like that's obviously going to put way too much on her. So I try to distribute it more, like thinking like, okay, is like the 3-year-old capable of doing this? Is the 5-year-old capable of doing, like, and give it to like the youngest child because the like jobs that I can give them are fewer.
That's genius. Literally genius. I didn't think about that, but yeah, it would even out. It would totally even out.
Yeah, I mean, like probably based on age, I think it does even out a lot better that way because, a 2-year-old, like you're not going to have them do as many chores as like an 8-year-old, but they also aren't capable of many things, so
Yeah.
then it kind of spreads it out better.
Yeah.
This is embarrassing, but I didn't know that. That's awesome.
You didn't know my philosophy.
I didn't know your philosophy, but that's fantastic.
I think again, that really helps with the idea of like, I think sometimes I even say it with my brother. So I have 2 siblings that are 8 and 7 years older than me. So my my oldest brother was really like my second dad. Like I was his baby sister, and like he protected me from everything. Right. But I think with like seeing the oldest sibling, I think they fall into that a lot. Like, well, I have to have all the responsibility, so I should have the responsibility of being able to like boss you around. Right. Or like, and I think that dynamic plays into it. And I'm not saying like I'm the youngest. So for me, I didn't have any younger siblings to boss around. But at the same time, I saw like my friends and other people that would do that to their siblings. And I'm just like, you're not being the youngest. I was like, stop. Like, you're not their mom. Like, let mom be mom. If they want to go and mess around and not get caught, like, let them do that. You don't have to be the tattletale. Yeah. But that's also the youngest sibling complex, I think. So.
Let me make my first interruption here. No, I love the question, and I love the discussion, and my mind goes to things, the way kind of things unfold. Like I'm thinking of one time I was talking with somebody who, due to very difficult life situations, they basically left the house at the age of 12 and never returned. And I found this out later on in the conversation, but earlier in the conversation, and there's an older person with kids, maybe even with grandkids already. Later in this conversation, it had become clear to me that they had assumed too much responsibility for themselves in the present. Kind of like seeing everything around them as if it was their responsibility. And as the conversation unfolded, it came out that they left the house when they were 12, and they basically started taking care of themselves when they were 12. And to me, and that's not an isolated incident, right? There is this delicate dynamic of, if we take on too much responsibility at too early of an age, that's not necessarily helpful. But then there's an error on the other side, which is to say, well, children can't take on any responsibility, and that also can stunt their growth, right? Because they're not, a number of things. They're not learning. They're not discovering that they are capable of doing things. They're not receiving the affirmation of their parents, that their parents are entrusting them with this responsibility. And there's Jesus talks about this in the parable of the dishonest manager. He says, he who is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much. So to start to be faithful in the little things. And that seems like a great principle, Lindsay, about starting with the youngest kids. And one question I have is like, okay, so are there things, so as you notice these dynamics in your own kids, does this bring up things in yourselves? Like what happens in you about recognizing areas of fear, of of anxiety, of worry, of insecurity, right? And I'm thinking too, I know I'm just kind of scattered, but I'm thinking too of what Jake said last time we talked, which is, God wants us to participate in his work of salvation, and he entrusts that to us, and we can cooperate in it. And similarly, the family is a reflection of that, as an image of that. And so the kids want to participate in the life of the family, including in the chores. But then, of course, how much is too much? But any thoughts there on what's going on in your own hearts as you try to navigate these dynamics?
I mean, I think that I don't come from a large family. And like I've definitely met people who have a negative reaction to large families, and people who grew up in large families and then for whatever reason, that I usually don't know, like chose not to have a large family themselves. So there is definitely some insecurity there in my heart of like, I want it to be a positive experience for everyone, like I want my kids to come out of this, like, and like not only keep the faith, but, also like see the beauty that I see in having a large family. So there's something there. And like, I think about that with the older kids, and our two oldest are girls, and they like love babies. And so our youngest is like their little, I mean, I think all the time, like, why, like, baby dolls were created for kids who don't have younger siblings. Like, they dress their baby sister, like they cart her around everywhere and they love it. And I actually had a conversation with one of them fairly recently, and I was like, like, you're asking me to do this. Are you sure, like, you want the responsibility? I don't know what it even was, like maybe changing her clothes, or I don't know, putting her down for a nap. I'm not sure. But they're like, yes. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I just don't want you to grow up and be like, you made me do everything taking care of her. I'm going to remind you that you asked for this. Like, you were the one who wanted it. But so I don't know. I hope that fares well in the long run. But like, I have the same worries, and like the worry of asking too much of them, and how much is enough and how much is too much. And
I think that's a really good point, is I've heard a lot of people that have really big families. I had Johnny and Marissa Horn on pretty early on in the thing, and she was saying like kind of the vile things that people will just say to you at the store. She's like, like people make all of these comments all the time when you have more than like 2 kids. And so, yeah, that's definitely like something also. It's just like going out in public. We kind of talked about this offline. It's like how feral is okay, because they're little, like, especially when they're so little, right? You have older kids, so that it's a little different. But like when they're so little, they're just kids. And there's part of it, especially like I really struggle with mass, because like at mass, you want them to be reverent, but they also don't want them to be so like you don't want to be so nitpicky that they don't want to go, right? Like you want it to be a good experience so that they like want to continue to go. So that's something I've always struggled with too. And I'm sure like the more kids I have, like it's probably, since our kids are pretty close, again, we'll have 3 under 3, or 3 and under, I should say. 3 and under. But like that's something that I always worry about, because like you don't want to disturb everyone else, but you also don't want to like be outside with your children the whole time. Like you actually want to be in mass, and then you also want them to like it. And I don't know if that's one of the things where you're like, here's 3, pick 2, like you get 2 of them, I don't know.
So another thing, I think I'm not changing the topic, I promise. But another thing about having many kids that I like to tell people is like, once you have more, and like especially like older, like the older kids help to bring your average up. So like if you take the average of like all your kids' behavior and they're all 3 and under, like your average is probably not very good because they're all 3 and under. But if I have 3 kids 3 and under, and then I have 4 kids all the way up to 12, and like the 4 other kids are fairly well behaved because they're like 5 and older, like my average is pretty good. And it makes like I feel like it like people see the older kids like being well behaved and they're like, oh, they're doing a fine job. And so if the little kids are crazy, it's like not that big of a deal. They're little kids. But like when you only have little kids, there's so much pressure on you and on the like just the little kids like to behave well. And then like I know that I feel like, and I was recently talking to a friend about it, like you feel like it reflects on your parenting and like who you are, like when your 3-year-old is misbehaving. And I just think that having older kids takes some pressure off of that because you can look at the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old or the 12-year-old and be like, they're perfectly fine. They sit at mass perfectly fine, you know? And so you don't have to like, and Father, you can like dissect this to help me how messed up it is. But like, I'm not basing my like worth as a parent on the 3-year-old, which isn't fair to the 3-year-old or me or anyone, you know.
That actually is
like that doesn't help you in the moment, but like there's hope to come, like as they get older.
Well, and that's, I think, the thing that's kind of freeing in you saying that, right? And is good to hear because I think, all of my friends, we have little kids, right? I don't have a ton of friends that have older kids besides like my nephews. And I think what's helpful to hear is my average is 3. So what does an average 3-year-old look like? And that's like what to expect, So.
Yeah. And it's age appropriate too. Another thing we do specifically at Mass is for the young kids. Like it starts pretty young. Like we're expecting good behavior from like our 18-month-old, we're expecting good behavior, which what does that look like? Like just not screaming in Mass, And so for her, she knows, and we tell her like be quiet. And she's not gonna be like perfectly quiet and still with her prayer hands. But she, like, if she's loud and screaming, we'll take her out. And I also don't make it fun in the back.
Yeah.
I think that's a thing I've seen a lot of parents do. Is that if they make it fun in the back, then the kid wants to go to the back.
Mm-hmm.
And so we make it not fun in the back. Like you don't get to get down. You get to maybe stand with dad in the cry room, like in the corner, and they're screaming. And sometimes I'll hold their hand, just, like gently, not
like in your arms, but you're holding their arm down so they're not able to.
Like, no, like you get your freedom back when and this is an 18-month-old, like you get your freedom back when you calm down and are civil, like they're still 18 months old. So it's like not, but she understands that. She knows that like, I'll get my hand back when I quit screaming and we'll go back to mom and the rest of the kids. Like they want to be out there when I quit screaming. And then they do. And sometimes it's like, last week it was like 5 trips and it was like, you want to quit, that's the reality. You want to like, just set them down and let them run around in the back. But if you stay consistent with those things, it starts at, 12 to 18 months. And then they're learning that as, and by the time they're 3, they've had how many experiences of this where they know what to expect and they start to learn what's expected of them. And then by the time they're 5, they're pretty good at Mass,
Just to add to the 18-month-old, like we don't let our kids, like we hold them until basically there's too many babies for us to just continue holding. So like the 18-month-old isn't actually like she's never put down in the pew. Like one of us is always holding her, or one of the bigger girls. But that, because it's
Something
just
always
like
goes
a
wrong.
whole new world. Like they're like crawling under the pew and kicking the people behind you, and like it's just like so our expectations of the 18-month-old is like she's held the entire time and she needs to use a quiet voice. Like, and that's I try to just say like, oh, whisper, because it's hard to tell them not to like talk, but like, can you whisper like mom? Whisper, whisper, whisper. Or, like distract them like with something else. And then usually like once there's like the new baby, then the next one gets put down and like then you've got to deal with like the roaming and like the sit still. But it's a lot easier to keep an 18-month-old still if they're in your arms, or a 2-year-old even, than when they have the freedom of the pew.
I do like I mean, that's an interesting, I mean, I feel like we're kind of too late on our kids because we're about to have another baby. So, and I don't think Eleanor would handle it very well if we just started holding her all mass. She'd be like, let me down. Yeah. But it's like a good idea. I think that's a good idea because then you're also teaching them to kind of like, this is a still time, Yeah.
And that's, I think, another like thing to consider is if that's the only time in their lives, once a week on Sunday, that they're asked to sit still, like you're not really setting them up for success there. But if you have like if you're reading aloud to your kids, if you're reading to them and you do ask them, not always like, can you read aloud while they're playing with Legos? Like totally, you totally can. But, or maybe it's mealtime, like that they're like we also expect our 18-month-old is in a high chair. Even the 3-year-old sits in a booster seat at the table, and like they're expected to sit there, not for hours on end, but like for the duration of the meal, and not disrupt, like so that we can have a conversation at the table, not be screaming or whatever. So I think that that's another thing to consider as, like with young kids is like, when else in their life are they expected to sit? Like, do they have chances during the week to practice sitting still and being quiet, whatever those times look like?
Let me ask you, Jake, jumping off of that example of going to the back and not making the back fun time. There's actually gives a really concrete example to what I'm trying to pull out, which is what's going on in you. Like, do you ever get, do you ever get impatient? What's your level of frustration like? Does it ever slip into sin? And how do you handle that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I get very frustrated, and I don't know, there's varying levels. Sometimes I handle it well, and I'm just like, I'm fine. And like, this is the expectation, and you're not following it, and these are the consequences. And um, but yeah, I've gotten very frustrated and fallen into sin, like in my heart, just being just so mad, letting it rock my peace. And like forgetting that like this is God's will for me, like me being in the back of the church with a screaming baby, trying to teach them these things. Like I've missed communion before because they just, I can't take them up the aisle and they're screaming, and like we've tried to do the shuffle before where like Lindsay goes and gets communion and then hurries back, and but I've had to go to the car before because it's so bad, and it can be infuriating.
By bad, you mean like the kid is just like screaming and out of control, like has lost it.
Yeah. And like there's other people in the back and they're like kicking and, like full on fit. uh,
It's really comforting to hear, to be honest.
but yes, like I have fallen into sin many times with that. And the I think that what I said about I forget that that's God's will for me. Like he's working on my heart in those moments to like love my child and be patient with my child and teach my child. Like not just let them do whatever they want, but to like love them through that and also offer that to Christ. Like I can't go to communion today. I really want to go to communion, but I offer this, this suffering to you, Lord, that I can't go to communion.
Is this fair to, would you agree with this? Would you say like this, that it's more important for you, and I'm not suggesting that you do it perfectly. I'm sure you would say that you don't, but when in a time like this of reflection, would you say that it's more important for you to be attentive and respectful of what's going on in you, and to allow, like you said, allow the Lord to work on your heart and to develop your virtue, that's more important than achieving the outcome that you want with the child, whatever it is, to stop screaming, to achieve the outcome that the child stops screaming?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think of St. John Bosco's letter in that, and I don't know it very well, but
I have it pulled up.
do you really?
Yeah,
Oh, man.
yeah. Do you want me to read
Yeah,
a
read it. Yeah,
couple sections of it? Yeah. This is so rich. But a couple of paragraphs, a couple of sentences. It says, "My sons, in my long experience, very often I had to be convinced of this great truth." My sons, he's talking to his priests who work with the boys, with troubled youth, basically. "It is easier to become angry than to restrain oneself, and to threaten a boy than to persuade him. Yes, indeed, it is more fitting to be persistent in punishing our own impatience and pride than to correct the boys. We must be firm, but kind, and be patient with them." So he said it is more fitting to be persistent in punishing our own impatience and pride, because it gets at the pride, right? Like, you're supposed to be doing, I already told you what you're supposed to be doing, and you're not doing it. So how dare you kind of undermine my authority? And okay, it's more, I have to punish my own pride, and that's more important than to correct the boys. But is that what you were thinking about, Jake, when you were thinking about the letter?
Yes, absolutely. That line right there, that it's more important to punish my own pride, or whatever you said, or whatever he said. Yeah.
How do we discern what is our pride versus like what is actual behavior that we should discipline?
You said something about like it's not about the outcome, but like what is going on in your own heart. I think that I've never like thought this. I haven't thought this through, but my thought here is like, is any discipline really about the outcome, or is it about the fact that it's like my duty as a mother, and it's like our duty as parents is to discipline our children? So like, ought I ever do it like for the outcome, or am I doing it because it's what I ought to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. Say more. What, give some examples, and help me flesh that out. Help me understand what you're saying and the distinction you're driving at.
I don't know if I have it flushed out any more than that, but like I just like, it's not, so taking the kid to the back of the church, can be super frustrating. But it's like our job as parents is to raise our kids to know the Lord and to serve the Lord. And part of that is going to Sunday Mass. And at Sunday Mass, like, they need to learn to worship properly. And that, Natalie, you asked earlier, and we never got to, like, different stages and expectations. That looks different. But if a child is not doing what is appropriate for their age and ability, then, and they have to be removed. Like, I mean, like, it's kind of about the outcome, but, like, for me, like, it doesn't matter whether, like, that time I take them out of Mass changes their behavior and produces the outcome that I'm hoping for. It's about the fact that, like, I, as a parent, have the job of, like, teaching them this, and, like, the next step in teaching them that is removing them, to the back of the church. But really, yeah, I think that could be applied to any discipline, and I think maybe it would make me have a better attitude about it at times if I, like, stopped waiting for the outcome and just, like, accepted that, like, right now my duty is to discipline the child and to take this next step towards what I will eventually lead to the outcome, but it's not really about the outcome.
Yeah. And we'll just say this, that there's something about surrendering the outcome to the Lord. It's like, okay, God, I'm going to do my duties to the best that I can. I'm going to be attentive to my heart. And as St. John Bosco says, to punish my own impatience and pride. And I'm going to be seeking to grow in virtue, which includes I'm going to seek to fulfill my duties according to my state in life. And that's my job. And the outcome, I release control. I release control of the outcome. Like, I can't control the outcome. I can only control what I do or don't do. And now I release the control of the outcome to you, Lord. And not like we do perfectly, and not like it's not like a switch that can be flipped, but it does. I do agree. I think I hadn't thought of it in these terms either. And, but it does seem to fit that it's like, if I'm prioritizing my own relationship with God and my own salvation, then that includes doing my duties, but it has to also include, the recognition that this is another person. This little child is another person. And if I'm going to be in relationship with this child, I have to accept that I can't control them. They're outside of my control. Like, if I attempted to control them for the rest of their lives, and I know sometimes, and I'm not a parent, right? So it's easy for me to say, but I know that sometimes when parents hear things like this, they think like, no, it is my job to control my child. And I think that can be translated with, like, it is my job to provide for my child, to discipline my child, to help my child to grow and to learn. Yes, of course, that is the parent's job. And these things can be translated into my own state in life as a priest, of course, but just to stay in the realm of parenting, that yes, it's our job to control, if by control we mean to do my own duties, do my own responsibilities. But the outcome of this other person, I have to respect the fact that this person is a person, even if they're young, like, they are a person. And if I'm going to have a relationship with them as they grow up, which is going to be the bridge for them to have a relationship with God as they grow up, then I'm going to have to surrender the control to them, to the Lord, and to them, for them to be able to grow into this mentality of fulfilling their own duties and prioritizing their own salvation. Otherwise, what can happen, I think, and I think this happens often, is the child grows up perceiving that their parents' attempts are to control them. And then that becomes the bridge to God. God is just trying to control me. And if God is trying to control me, then why would I want to be around him?
I think it's always really good, and I don't ever really do this much. I think I get so focused on, like, oh, what are child experts saying, like, you should do, and how should we do all this stuff. There's so much information, but like, I think a good thing to ponder back on is, how am I parenting my child so that I'm setting the foundation for the relationship that they'll have with God and with like worship, right? Because they're going to get their first experience of the type of loving relationship that God has with them from their parents. And I don't think I ever really think about that. So that's like the first thing. It's just like a side note. And then the other thing is, I can't remember if it was you guys or if it was the Dodges, but they were talking about in one of the previous episodes about it's better to step in earlier, because the more times you like warn someone with words, or like you don't want them to do that behavior, like the more frustrated you get. And so then you're going to be like, the punishment might be worse than if you would have just like, when you saw the frustrating behavior that you're like, oh, I see this is going to go somewhere. And so you say, hey, stop doing that. But instead of stop doing that, you actually walk over and like take the thing. I feel like that's something I've been trying to do a little bit more, but I've also realized like how lazy I am, because I'm like cooking or my hands are busy doing something. And I'm like, stop pushing your sister, when I should just like go pick him up and like move him to a different room or move Ellie to a different toy or something. So I think that's another thing that comes to mind when we talk about like frustration and like pride, is like, are we waiting to the point? Am I waiting to the point of getting super frustrated that I'm going to overreact, right? Instead of just like taking action initially.
Well, like the whole thing you were talking about, Father, too, like goes to the pride piece. And I think what you're talking about, Natalie, is it does. We're trying to gain in some ways. I feel this, like I'm trying to gain control over them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they need to do what I need them to do. And sometimes you're in a position where like, if they don't listen, you're kind of in trouble. Like, you got pot of boiling water, your hands are a mess. You got, you're cutting something with a knife and they're doing something, and you literally can't go and do anything, right this second, and they're not listening. That's like, it's an opportunity to be patient, like, and stop put down whatever you need to put down, and intervene. But if it just keeps escalating, like, do this. If you don't do that, you're going to get this. If you don't listen to that, you're going to get this, and then it escalates because it's pride. Our pride gets in the way.
And then this is like, it kind of goes into before, like a little bit of a question before, right? Is like, I'll give you a concrete example. So my son, I had all of his clothes together and I was like, put your socks on. He can put his socks on, or whatever, put your shirt on, whatever it was. Like, put your shirt on. We're going on a walk. Didn't do anything. Please put your shirt on. We're going on a walk. We can't leave until you go on a walk. Still didn't do it. Third time, I'm like, all right, you're going in timeout. And so is that like a point though, is that good discipline because he's not listening to me and I'm trying to like teach like respect? Or is that being like, I'm frustrated, even though I'm really calm, like I'm super calm in this situation, like, is that still a good discipline because he's not putting his shirt on? Like, I don't know if that makes sense in terms of like the balance between like, I guess the question would be like, when is discipline, like when is it appropriate for them just to listen to you, like to discipline because they're not listening to you, versus like being your pride, right? Of like, you're not listening to me, so I'm going to put a consequence regardless if you're calm or frustrated, right? And is there a difference between like, maybe it's better if you're calm, like maybe it's like a more appropriate behavior if you're calm, and if you're angry, maybe that's a sign that it's not like more pride. I don't know. But like, I guess that would be an example. It's like, I've asked you 3 times and my husband was like, yeah, you have to go in timeout because you apparently made mommy mad. She's like, I was calm about it. He just didn't do it. I'm tired of him not. And that's the thing. I said, I'm tired of him not listening to me when I know he can do that. So I guess that's a question. Like, should I start judging that as like more of my pride, or is that appropriate discipline? Because they're not listening.
I think that like there's the objective, like the objective thing is like he owes that to you. He owes um yeah, obedience. He owes obedience to you, or it's under the virtue of justice. Like he should listen to you. I think the pride is like what's going on in our own heart.
Mm.
Because yes, you should discipline because and I would argue like your example earlier about the um go get the diapers and that they don't get the diapers. Like I would make them go get the diapers. And that's what the Dodgers were talking about. Like they'd literally grab their hands and go and like
Yeah.
pick up the toy or whatever. Like I'd go grab the hands and pick up the wipes and bring them to where you're at. Like it could be your laziness or my laziness. Like that's a reality. Like we need to be looking at our heart. But um sometimes once you say it too, like you can always like take it back if you realize like if I realize I'm being lazy, like I'm sorry that I interrupted your like whatever you were playing and you were running by and I was like, hey, get the wipes, and they aren't wanting to listen, and you could apologize for that.
Yeah.
But it's also they should listen, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing to teach them. And I and the other thing about your question is like when should I discipline and when is it pride? Like the thing, the word discipline comes from disciple or um, father. We were talking about this, um, but it's like to teach. So is that right, Father? Correct me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Or like the
Mm-hmm.
behavior of a student is discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the discipline is the action that a disciple performs. A disciple is a student, a
Is a
pupil.
student. Yes. And so discipline takes many forms. Like discipline could be just talking to them, or
Mm-hmm.
coaching them on some matter. But then sometimes it takes like you need to put your nose in the corner or you need to, do an extra job for mommy or daddy. Um, it just the discipline is like that's where prudence comes in. Like when do we use different tactics or, the context is really important, what's going on. But we should always be teaching and disciplining and I don't know. Am I making sense?
I think the one thing you said that I really like is obedience, because that's one of the things, like, if I don't teach them how to be obedient to us, not in like and then going back to what Father said, not in like a demanding or oppressive way, but if I don't teach them like loving obedience, then how are they going to have that? Like when you when you said that word, I was like, oh yeah, like how are they ever going to learn how to be lovingly obedient to God and to like, later on, like when we have like why you should have any type of prudence or, that kind of stuff. It all kind of stems from that first piece. I think it kind of ties in with what Father Centro was saying as well. Kind of clicked when you said that.
I agree. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I know that it's hard to say everything at once, or it's impossible to say everything at once. And so sometimes when making one point, it may seem like that one point is mutually exclusive with other points that we also know to be important. And I think we want to be careful there to not swing the pendulum too far to either extreme, but rather, to seek how these things can be integrated, because I think they can. Yeah, of course, obedience is a virtue, and it's an important virtue. It's a daughter of justice, and it has to be learned, and it has to be taught. And the earlier, the better. And one thing that I know Jake and Lindsay do really well, and I think we've talked about this before, but I've also noticed this with with the little Dodges, with Kenny and Catherine, is that they don't allow. Now, let me preface this with this, that the context here is a warm and affectionate home and family life. Like, I think that's so important to keep going back to. And then also within that the parents are prioritizing their own salvation, their own sanctification. Because if they're not, then the parents can very quickly abuse their authority. And I can very quickly abuse my authority as a priest. And so, okay, in that context, Jake and Lindsay and the little Dodges, I've seen this repeatedly, that they don't allow their kids to talk back to them, to say no to them, to walk away from them. It's like not even the tiniest bit of it, or maybe they do when I haven't seen it, but it seems to me that they don't at all. It's like, they ask them something. It's like, oh, but why? But yes, mom. Yes, dad. And they'll like back each other up, right? So if Lindsay will say something and somebody talks back, then Jake's like, no, yes, mom. Like, okay, I go and do it. And it's always a reasonable, maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys would say it's not always reasonable, but it seems to me it's always or almost always reasonable request out of love, out of this place of compassion and virtue and so forth. But okay, so within this context, yeah, definitely discipline has to be taught, and obedience has to be taught, and has to be expected and required. And if the kids are too young to know how to obey, then the example of the big Dodges is great. It's like, okay, I'm gonna obey with you. It's like, I'm gonna take you over there and take your hands and grab the thing with your hands. So now you're obeying me. I'm basically doing it, but we're kind of doing it together. I'm obeying myself on your behalf. Which actually this may be a stretch, but this is a bit of the Trinity. The Trinity is like the Spirit, is the one who's praying in us, and Jesus is the one who's growing in us, and so forth. And anyways, but yeah, I think these things are not mutually exclusive.
I think the warm and affectionate home thing is like key, because you can teach justice or try to teach, obedience and justice, but resentment will build if they are not loved. And so you may not be wrong in your assessment of them, them not being obedient, but they recognize the kind of the veil within your own heart that, like, you're not loving me, and that is what builds resentment.
Yeah. Okay. So I have two other questions that kind of build off of that I think would be helpful as well. So the first one, going back to like the loving and affectionate home, like as you've added more kids, and I don't know if the Flanagans kind of talked about this a lot in the last episode, which is about like the one thing you can do is love your spouse. Like the one like outcome you can have for the kids to have a happy childhood is to love your spouse. So, and again, I think because you had kids close together, you probably kind of know what we're going through. It's just like, how do you find time and like resources? Because it's like an arm and a leg to find a babysitter nowadays. So, that kind of stuff. Like, how did you guys work through that and try to have like time together when it feels like you're also like emotionally drained, because there's like a lot of demands? So that was my first question. And I think the second one, how do you guys continue to build like a loving relationship with your kids when you need to get things done? Right? Because like, I feel like there's some days where I'm like, I just want to spend more time like intentionally sitting on the floor with my kids and like playing with them. But I have laundry and dishes and food to make, and there's just like a bazillion things, and I can literally work until 10 o'clock at night, trying to get everything clean. We try to do an outing. Like, I think that's like the big thing, is even though I'm not like playing with them during the outing necessarily, I'm just like kind of there supervising like wherever they're going. But like that's kind of like a loving connection with my kids, especially. But like I wish that I had more time to just like sit and play with them, because it ends up being like I'm too busy, like cleaning up or doing whatever, and trying to like keep the household. So those are the two questions. Like, how do you guys focus on your relationship together as you grow a family? And then how do you try to build and foster those connections with your children when you have like everyday life that needs to be done?
And feel free to tie any closing thoughts on that, because I know we're coming up here to our time.
Yeah, it's hard to spend time with each other and with the kids. I hear you, like during the day with the kids, and like, oh, I feel guilty because I want to spend more time with you and I'm too busy. But like also like laundry, dishes, like what do you. And it's always easier to give ideas than to actually put it into practice yourself. So
Right.
I'm right there with you, and just thinking about it, I'm like, how can you pull your kids into what you're doing? Like, can they do the laundry with you? Can they help you with the dishes? Like, and it makes it longer. Like, I'm not saying that is easy. And sometimes you need to just like get the dishes done, or like just make the dinner and not have kids in the kitchen, or whatever. But that's maybe something that I would explore. And then I think like for me, especially having little ones, like now I feel like they all play together, and like I feel less like guilty about not playing on the floor with the little kids, because they have big kids playing with them and each other to play with. And it's like, I don't know, I don't feel that pressure anymore, I guess. But it was helpful to me to find like what I really enjoyed doing with the kids. So like we like when I had just little, 3 little ones, like we did go on outings, because I felt like I was going crazy at home with these little ones all day and like no adult interaction. So I tried to leave the house almost every day, just because like for my own sanity. And now I'm like, wait, we have to leave the house? Like, oh no, like what am I gonna do? Like it's totally switched. But like in those days, like we loved going to the library or going to the park or going for a walk, like, I felt like they had my time, and also I was less pulled, because I can't fold the laundry while I'm at the library with them, like, so they had more of my attention. But also finding like what I love to do with them. And like for me, like I liked reading to them. Like I felt like it was something that was good for everyone. Like I enjoyed it, and it's good for them. And so then that was something that like I enjoyed doing with them, and it was easier to prioritize that. Where like the whole like imaginary play on the floor thing, where our oldest especially would like, you couldn't ever imaginary play right with her. Like she would just tell you like what to say and like what to do, and like, no, don't move that way. Oh, say it this way. And like, that was not my thing. So then like, of course I would rather go do the dishes than like sit and do that, so then I would always choose the dishes. But if I could like, okay, like now's our reading time together, like I'll sit down and read. And then I felt good because I had spent, time, like good, like cuddle time on the couch. It was great. But I also like enjoyed it, versus like it feeling like misery.
Yeah.
And as far as spending, sorry, do you want? As far as spending time together, I really appreciated like the Flanagans talking about kind of different phases in parenting, and like how that's changed. And
Yeah. We're like right on the cusp, I think, of having a little more, having the ability to do that a little bit more, because It's hard right now, and we could do it better. But it used to be easier because I appreciated the Flanagans talking about that too. When the kids were younger, they'd go to bed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we're in that time where we have some older kids and we don't get done till 8:30, 9:30 some nights. And so it's late where it used to be like 7:30. We used to get kids down and we'd have multiple nights a week where we would just spend time together talking, or we'd read or
And I
do
don't know if
things.
we like recognized that time while we had it. So
Mm.
that would maybe be my advice, like looking back at that time, is like know that time that you get after bedtime isn't going to last forever. Like your
Yeah.
kids are going to grow up and get older and stay up later, and that's going to get more difficult. Um, just like our kids are going to get older and like we're going to have even less time in the evening than we do now, like that's where we're headed. But, the trade-off there is that they're old enough to, like for us to leave, and or they will be like old enough for us to leave them home with the younger siblings.
Yeah.
But if you can like maybe just recognize like that time that you do have together, and obviously like different, I don't know what your circumstances are with work and whatnot, but assuming that kids get put to bed, in the early evening, and you can maybe spend some time together in an evening, like maybe even do something to make that like a special time, like a date night, rather than just like another night that you're like
What do
whatever
we
around the house.
do? Yeah. I feel like that's where like can be so mentally exhausted sometimes. We're like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. Like, I don't know if you watch The Jungle Book, you like the birds.
Yeah.
What do you want to do today?
Don't start that again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. Someone was just telling us that, like, on their honeymoon, they went to some resort, and for whatever reason, like, they ended up having like coffee after dinner every night. And they said it's kind of like stuck and been their thing. So they like, I don't know how many evenings a week, but they said like almost every night they'll sit and have a cup of decaf coffee together. And I was like, that's just like a really sweet thing, like, especially like to start on your honeymoon and then that be like your tradition through your marriage. But maybe there's like a special drink or like a snack or, something to like make it like feel a little more like a date than just like sitting at home,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
that time is really special. And I think that that's what you've got when you've got young kids, is like they can go to bed early and you can have an evening together.
Yeah. There's another thing I thought of when you were talking about um, having to get things done. Yeah, that was part of your question. Having to get things done, and also like teaching them to do things, or doing things with them. Like there's a reality there, like there's a balance or a tension that you got to get the thing done, but you also, want to spend time with them or want to teach them how to do it. Um, and so that's just a tension. There's this story that I don't know where I heard it, but there was it's like a fable or a parable about something like this. But um, there was a guy walking past a a boy and his father. They were building a fence, and the man that was walking by was watching the father like help the son, set the posts and nail in some boards. And the man said, as he was walking by, he said, it'd be a lot faster if you just did it yourself. And the father was like, "Oh, you think I'm building a fence? I'm hanging out with my son, or I'm spending time with my son." Like,
That's good.
and so now it can't always be that way. Like you gotta get things done sometimes. Like sometimes you just need to build a fence. But there are times, and it's really important to spend that time. I was thinking about it today, that parable today. I was working on some irrigation stuff in our yard or in our pasture area. And I was walking fast there. I wanted to get some stuff done. And I was walking fast, and Benny, our 3-year-old, was like trailing behind me. And like I was getting farther and farther away from him. And I like stopped. It's like I could walk with him. And it was painful, but I stopped and waited for him, and then we walked together, and I asked him some questions, and it was cute. But I was like, I can't lose that, the sight of like he's spending time with me. And there's times where I need to just get something done. That's true. But I don't know, it's a tension.
I think the thing that I think about most when you said that is it's going to take me a long time to do any of those tasks while they're awake. So I might as well just make it even longer. Like as you're talking about that, it's like, yeah, okay. Because I was thinking about when my husband takes them to do something and I can clean the whole house, get like all the laundry, almost all the laundry done, and he's gone for like an hour and I get everything done. But other days it takes me like literally all day to get it done because of all the interruptions that you have. And so I think that's a good point in my head as you're talking about that is like, it's going to take me forever anyways. I might as well just include them in it, and like try to make it fun and not get frustrated when I would like to just get it done. Just like kind of almost accept it in advance that it's not going to get done fast. So you might as well just enjoy it together,
Yeah. And it's an investment in your future too. Like whatever you're teaching them now is a job that they're going to be able to do more and more independently as time goes on. And so like it's worth doing it just for the sake of spending time with them, but also like you're also teaching them valuable skills when they're able to help you with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, you guys. Thank you for all of this. And thank you, Jake, for that story there at the end. That's gonna stay with me, and I'm gonna take that to prayer. And I know that's always how the Lord is relating to me, and He relating to each of us. He's like I'm like trailing behind and trying to catch up, and he stops and he's like, yeah, sure, he could do it. He could build the fence without me much faster than he could with me. That's for sure. But somehow he wants, for some strange reason, he wants to stop and wait for us and walk with us and take much longer to build a fence and build a much less efficient or effective and symmetrical fence or whatever. but he delights in that. He delights in that.
Yes.
So. Awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. To be continued.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It was so fun it's fun to bounce ideas off of someone that's a little bit like ahead of where your stage is, like what season of life you are. And I think it also like provides a lot of hope. So, just to realize that like, I think oftentimes you think that we're going to be in this stage forever or life is always going to be like this. And so you're trying to figure it out perfectly right now. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice. And I appreciate all of your feedback and sitting and answering all my questions.
We don't have answers really, like only experience that we can share. And it's like, I feel uncomfortable even like sitting in the seat where like I'm having questions asked. Like I don't have, any answers, but I love being in your seat and like getting to just ask, like, just tell me about like your experience. So in the interest of paying it forward, these are just some thoughts that we have. And yeah.
Also, go ahead.
Well, hopefully some little pieces on thing is, helpful and whatever.
Yeah. And also, like, Father, do you still have that quote from St. John Bosco up?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that like in the beginning, I never noticed this until tonight when you read it. I've read that quite a few times, but he says something about it took him a while, or I noticed, or something like that.
In the beginning of what I read,
Yeah.
my sons, in my long experience, very often I had to be convinced of this great truth.
Yes.
Yeah, that I hadn't really caught that either.
So, like he failed.
Yeah,
And knew he saw himself failing.
yeah.
So it's not
Again
I
and
knew he'd have it
again,
all figured
again and
out.
again. Yeah,
But like we're on a journey.
yeah. Amen. All right, you guys. Good night.
Good
God
night.
bless you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode and we'll see you then.